So thank you for coming around to Gentrack. Thank you for having me here. I'm pretty excited to share with you a little bit of my story as a leader. And I thought that, as Hattie was saying, how many times as leaders we think, oh, has somebody else gone through the same hurdle as I'm going through? Am I alone in the universe? Can I get some help? And I've often thought about those questions, and has anybody solved this problem before in terms of leadership? Things that I was not prepared for. And I collected some of those lessons and thought about sharing those with you because they might be of value. If you take one of them away today, the presentation has accomplished its goals. As you're going to see, the presentation follows the narrative of my journey, and the lessons are aligned with the events where I took the lesson from. But it doesn't follow the timeline when I figured out the lesson. And that's actually the very first one. Things won't come to you till later on in your journey, so treasure every moment in your career. If you don't hide away from those painful ones, because if you do, you're going to lose the opportunity of learning. You're going to miss the one thing that painful moment can give you. At that point, meaning will not be obvious. You won't know why those things are happening or how can you do better, but eventually it will become obvious. So treasure those things. All right, so let's get going on an adventure, a leadership adventure. So when I started, I was an engineer. I fresh out of uni, thought I was the best engineer in the world, probably as most of engineers do. And at that point in time, I had a great manager that I didn't realize was a great manager until years later. He was great because looking back, I can see he was enabling me and empowering me to do whatever I felt was important for the software and for the firmware I was developing. He gave me a voice in the leadership, in the development group, even though I was just initially an intern and then a junior developer. He made sure to give me opportunities that he wouldn't give to other people. But out of my immaturity as an engineer, I couldn't realize those great things because of one thing. As my manager, he didn't like to be called the boss. He didn't want to be the boss. He was someone great at what he was doing, and that's why he was promoted into a leadership position. And what that caused into the team and caused the pain that I was seeing is that sometimes we do need someone to be the example or set a consistent approach for the group. And by not having the person be able to rely on the person that should be that one person, it caused me a lot of frustration. Looking back, that is the reason why I decided to go into leadership. Because I was getting bored with programming at some point, and looking at the gap that my leader was leaving, I thought, maybe that's where I can be good at. That I can help teams and provide the environment where teams can feel that they can do the best that they can do every day, and when they do have a problem, they can rely on me to solve it. So that is the why I decided to go into this leadership path. And the lesson here is that the boss role is an important one. You know, people say, don't be a leader, don't be a boss. I really think what they mean is don't be bossy, but understand the role of the boss and be confident about it, own it. That's the only way you're going to actually be a good leader as well. So okay, I decided to take a leap of faith and then let's go into leadership. Took a career opportunity that would enable me to be a team lead. And that was the rock bottom. It was the rock bottom because in that experience, I was exposed to all the sorts of management styles and leadership styles that did not resonate with me. I had my first manager was someone that opposite to the first one, would not allow me to put my own ideas into place, would not help me to contribute to the company. It would be his way or the highway. But in particular, I had one manager that every week we would have a leadership alignment meeting, which actually was just a Wednesday screaming meeting. Screaming for him. He was just using that setting to take the frustrations out of his guts. And taking frustration out of his guts might make you feel better. It doesn't make your team feel better. In fact, it doesn't create any positive outcome. People just notice that you're frustrated. And I didn't realize it then. I only realized it years later, as you're going to see it in the presentation, but that shattered my confidence as a leader and as a contributor. So looking back, and surely as leaders, we will feel frustrated some days when the team could have had a different approach, and we knew they could have had, but they didn't. And we will feel like transmitting that frustration away. But remember this when you feel that urge. Your team is not responsible for your frustrations. Your inability as their leader to inspire better outcomes is responsible for your frustrations. And if you really understand the difference, the frustration is coming from the inside out, then you will be able to control it. You'll be able to have a different approach and use that frustration to perhaps change your own style and inspire a different outcome. Okay, something else that experience taught me was something coming from within the team. So there was one day when the team was looking at each other and they were sure they would not deliver anything by the end of the sprint. They were like, oh man, this is so difficult. There's so many blockers. We need to talk to manufacturing. We need to talk to product. We need to talk to marketing. Nothing's going to happen. And everyone was hopeless. And then on the next day, the very next day, on the stand-up, everybody was hopeful. Everybody knew there was a way. We might not know what the way was, but we were surely we're going to get it. And looking at that difference, I was puzzled. Why the team changed from one day to the other that way without having any fact or any reason? And I asked the team, what happened? What they answered stuck to me to this day. They said, we are positive because you are positive, and we were negative because you were negative. That's the moment when I learned something about emotional projection. As leaders, we will transmit our emotions into our teams, and our teams will mirror and reflect those emotions back at us and at the organization and at their work. So I'm not saying that we should always be happy and always have a smile on your face. We should be genuine, but understanding that our emotions might not have anything to do with the team, but they will pick up on it. They will think it's, even subconsciously, they will reflect that. And on those most hopeful days, try to remember, perhaps there's something about your own emotions being transmitted into that situation. Okay, ultimately, I realized that experience was not aligned with the type of person I was or the type of leader I wanted to become, and I decided to move on. Coincidentally, it was the time that I decided to come to New Zealand. And I was sure about one thing. It was about change. And this time, I was going to lead myself and own the role. There was just one problem. I didn't have any confidence because of the experience I was just coming out of. In fact, I was a mess in my first year. I didn't know how to execute, to help the team to execute. I didn't know how to inspire better outcomes. I was actually seeking friends out of my team instead of realizing that sometimes you always need to be friendly, but be careful with the sort of relationship you seek from your team, because you do have a difference in responsibility. And it took me my most important mentor, my most important coach in my career so far to enable me and help me to understand that there's a difference between seeking friendships and being friendly. In fact, the big lesson here is that as a leader, you need to be the stepping stone for the team. You need to provide that solid ground where the team can step into. And sometimes you need to do that by reflecting that force back to the team. In fact, you can be kind and firm at the same time. Kindness and firmness are not opposites. They are complementary to each other. Kindness means that you're going to always recognize the human being next to you or across the table. And remember that as much as they need support, you need support. As much as they need development, you need development. But the firmness, being firm, is understanding your responsibility as an organizational leader and what the team needs to keep on going. And sometimes it's about providing that consistency forward and being that example. There's where I learned that accidentally, without wanting, I had become my first manager. I was okay being called the boss, but I was not okay with the role. And when I learned and really understood the difference between kindness and firmness, that's when I started owning the role. All right, but something that neither my coach and my mentor could do for me is to help me understand the different demands of the job, because sometimes they seem to be pulling us in different directions. The company seem to sometimes want that we did things as fast as we could just to deliver an outcome without really resonating with what's the impact that would have on the team, and they were just expecting me as a leader to carry that over to the team. On the other side, obviously the team needed a healthy environment to grow, but at the same time they were not connecting with the urgency of our delivery. And we were looking internally, both sides. No one was looking actually at the customer and seeing, okay, but is this what the customer need? And I was struggling with the difference. How come one side cannot see the other? And that's the moment when I learned the most important description of my role as a leader, as a team lead at Dane. As a leader, we need to enable a consistent, sustainable delivery of outcomes. And for me, those three words are really, really important because they represent a threefold commitment. First one is consistency. That's a commitment to the company. Organizations need consistency coming from the team. They need a consistent approach and a consistent output. That's the only way they can actually predict how they will apply their resources and get the outcomes that our customer needs. And if we don't have consistency, we'll be all over the show, and it's going to be very hard to maintain a healthy organization. Sustainability, it's actually a commitment to the people, because it doesn't matter if we are consistent. If the team is not, at the end of the delivery cycle, they are not ready to do once again. If you have a retention problem, if you create an unhealthy environment, your organization will be unhealthy, and you'll be spending a lot of resources just to keep the team going. Obviously, from a people perspective, not having a healthy and sustainable environment, they cannot bring their skills at best every day. They don't feel like coming to work, and we need as leaders to provide the sort of environment that they are seeking to come to work every day. And finally, delivery. That's a commitment to the customer. Doesn't matter if we're consistent, doesn't matter if we're sustainable, if we're not delivering something of value, if we're not delivering value to someone at the end of the day, we won't be here for long. So that's why it's really important for us as leaders to be, in my opinion, to be consistent, sustainable, and focus on delivering value to someone. I still have one more thing to say, but I think that this is a good time for us to pause and then see what are the questions that you have. So do you have any questions from what we've discussed so far? That's a very interesting question. There are two things that I think it's important to separate. The methodologies that came from the Agile mindset and the Agile mindset per se. So the Agile mindset, I think it fits very well with this. It seeks iterative delivery of value, seeking feedback. It also tries to inspect through self-reflection how we can be better internally, and at the end of the day, it looks for having a iteration or continuous iteration, so more of a consistent approach. I think that mindset per se fits very well with this. Now, each methodology might be focused on a different aspect of these three commitments and might apply better to one organization than other. So the methodology itself, it depends. But the mindset, I feel it fits very well.
You said that your team performed really well and was managed to finish the sprint that they were really struggling with, and that they were mirroring you going from negative to positive.
Yep.
What made you go from negative to positive during that sprint?
Life circumstances. And one day I was just having a bad day, and everything was just bad for me too. The next day, I don't know, I had a good night's sleep. I came to the office very positive. I had a good chat to everyone at the start of the day, had some coffee with my teammates, and they saw me positive. They saw me happy. There was nothing to do with the team or with the organization. It was just coming from me.
Maybe a follow-up on that. Were there any times when you did kind of consciously become aware that your emotions were impacting your team?
Yeah, not right there after that moment, because it took me a while to really realize the concept behind it. But eventually, when I realized the importance of being in control, yes, I did manage to channel my emotions better. Of course, there are days that it's so hard. On those days, I do think it's better to work with the organization so that you're actually not at the environment. If you can at all work from home that day, or go home earlier, because it's going to pass to the team. So just be mindful of that. You don't have to lie to yourself or to others and just have a smile on the face. It's not about that. It's about being genuine and understanding that you that you have that responsibility to foster a positive thinking in the team. I think we have time for one more question. I think you raised the hand.
So my question is about how much experience do you think is needed as a team member, and how much can you learn from your team leaders before you actually jump into the role? So you said you were bored of programming, so you went into a team leader when it was available, right? So do you think it's better on the job, or do you learn from different team leaders and then groom yourself to the maximum extent possible and then jump into that role?
Yes. I think every leader will have a different journey. In my case, I've been an engineer for 3 years before jumping into the leadership path. There are people that took more time, people that went straight to leadership via other means. I think each person is different. It's about the variety of experiences. Okay, so just to wrap up, all these lessons, they actually sum up to something for me. As leaders, we can have very different styles, we can have very different journeys. And some people will say that you're being effective as a leader by how many people decide to come along your journey. I argue something different. I argue that true leaders are true leaders because they inspire people not to follow them, but to lead themselves, to lead in their lives and in their field of expertise. What type of leader are you? Thank you.